Many thanks for joining me on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria. The kickstart with Israel evacuates Jenin as Gaza fire rockets. Ukraine says last few days counter-offensive fruitful. South Korea says North Korea's satellite has no military utility. At least 43 injured in Russian attack on Ukraine. And Guatemala courts suspend certification of poll results. Stay with me for these and more stories. The Israeli army said 5 rockets were fired at them from the Gaza Strip on Wednesday, July 5th, as the military started withdrawing forces from Jenin in the occupied West Bank after a major 2-day operation in the area. 12 Palestinians and an Israeli soldier have been killed during the fight on Jenin refugee camp launched early Monday under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hard-right government. The attack, as Israel's largest military operation in years in the West Bank, employed hundreds of troops as well as drone strikes and army bulldozers that ripped up streets. On Tuesday, in another place, a car ramming and stabbing attack in Tel Aviv wounded 7 people before the suspect was shot dead. Early on Wednesday, the army said it had intercepted 5 rockets fired at Israeli territory from the Gaza Strip. There was no instant claim of the responsibility from any Palestinian factions. In response to the rockets launched earlier tonight, the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, presently striking in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli army said early on Wednesday morning, which a Palestinian security source said had hit a Hamas military site in northern Gaza but caused no injuries. Explosions had been heard from Jenin camp and a drone hovered overhead on Tuesday, reports said. In the last 5 years, this is the worst raid, said Qasim Ben Gaida, a nurse at a hospital morgue. The army said its forces had pulled to pieces 6 explosive manufacturing facilities and 3 operational solution rooms in Jenin and confiscated great quantities of weapons. The weapons were located in hideouts, a mosque, its pits concealed in civilian areas, operational situation rooms, and in vehicles, it said. The army said it had uncovered militant hideouts, armed depots, and underground shafts used to store explosives. Now talking Russia-Ukraine war, according to a senior security official, a Ukraine counter-offensive against Russian forces has been particularly fruitful in recent days. The comments by Oleksiy Danilov, who heads Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, were Kyiv's newest positive assessment of the month-old counterattack, although Moscow has not acknowledged advances by Ukraine. Hanna Maliar, Ukraine's deputy defense minister, also reported gains around the ruined eastern city of Bakhmut amidst aggressive Russian resistance. Russian forces captured the city in May after 10 months of fighting. At this stage of active hostilities, Ukraine's defense forces are fulfilling the #1 task, the maximum destruction of manpower, equipment, fuel depots, military vehicles, command posts, artillery and air defense forces of the Russian army, Danilov wrote on Twitter. The last few days have been particularly fruitful, he said, without providing any details from the battlefield. The Ukrainians are in the early stages of their campaign to take back land occupied by the Russians since they launched their full-scale invasion in February 2022 and are up against minefields, anti-tank ditches and other obstacles, as well as layered defensive lines reportedly up to 20 kilometers, 12 miles deep in some places. The Institute for the Study of War, ISW, a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, in its newest assessment said Danilov's comments appeared to underline an ongoing campaign to attract Russian manpower and assets over attempting to conduct massive, sweeping mechanized maneuvers to regain large swaths of territory rapidly. Maliar earlier said on July 3rd, Ukraine had liberated about 37.4 square kilometers of territory in eastern and southern Ukraine over the previous week. The current pace of Ukrainian operations is not indicative of a stalemate or evidence that Ukraine cannot retake large areas, ISW said. Gains were reported in the south, where Valery Shershin, spokesperson for the Tavria or Southern Military Command, said Ukrainian troops had advanced up to 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles in the Berdyansk direction against fierce Russian resistance. In the areas outside Bakhmut, Maliar said troops had pushed forward in the south, but there was no progress in the city's north, where fighting was extreme. According to her, Russian forces were also making advances further north near Liman and Svatov, where Russian troops have recently been particularly active. In Makivka, a town in the Russian-controlled part of the eastern Donetsk region, Ukraine's military had destroyed a formation of Russian forces. Russia-installed officials said one civilian died and 36 others were wounded in the attack. Meanwhile, Russia's Defense Ministry spokesperson Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov said Russian forces resisted 10 Ukrainian attacks in the direction of Donetsk in the previous 24 hours, according to reports. He said dozens of Ukrainian soldiers were injured or killed and key equipment, including HIMARS systems, destroyed. Russia also claimed to have repelled attacks near Liman and disrupted Ukrainian operations in the Zaporizhia region, where Ukraine says its forces have captured a cluster of villages. South Korea has said its analysis of the wreckage from a North Korean spy satellite that crashed into the sea suggests that the equipment had no meaningful military use. On May 31st, Pyongyang launched what it said was its first military spy satellite, but the rocket crashed soon after taking off, plummeting into the sea off South Korea's west coast. South Korea's military started a salvage operation almost immediately, recovering debris from the rocket as well as the satellite itself in a complex operation involving aircraft, the Navy, and deep-sea divers. The Defense Ministry in Seoul said on Wednesday that the parts were analyzed by experts in South Korea and the United States. They evaluated it at no military utility as a reconnaissance satellite at all, the ministry said after the 36-day salvage operation came to an end. The initial assessment showed the satellite's reconnaissance was poor in terms of resolution and its ability to trace targets, said Lee Chun-jeon, an expert at South Korea's Science and Technology Policy Institute. Sending a military spy satellite into orbit is a major element of the military modernization plan of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who has said it is essential to improving monitoring of the U.S. Following a rare admission of failure, Pyongyang has said it will carry out another satellite launch very soon. Nuclear-armed North Korea has been pursuing a satellite launch program since the 1990s. The May launch was widely condemned by South Korea, Japan, and countries in the West as a violation of international law and United Nations Security Council resolutions that ban Pyongyang from using ballistic missile technology. Pyongyang rejects such criticism as an infringement of its sovereign right to self-defense and space exploration. North Korea launched objects that remain in orbit in 2012 and 2016. Pyongyang has said that they are observation satellites, but there has no been confirmation they are functioning or transmitting signals. Now, no less than 43 people, including 12 children, were injured after a Russian attack on the small town of Pervomaisky in the northeastern Kharkiv region, Ukrainian officials said. Footage showed black smoke billowing from a block of tall flats with cars in flames nearby, while Andriy Yermak, the head of Kyiv's presidential office, shared images from the town of burned and destroyed cars. Regional Governor Oleh Syniehubov said the attack occurred about 1:35 p.m. Kyiv time on Tuesday. Pervomaisky is home to almost 28,000 people and is relatively far from the front lines. Syniehubov said the youngest of the wounded was a 3-month-old baby. The child's condition was not immediately clear. Another baby was also hurt. Both were amongst dozens taken to the hospital. Some said the attack was linked to a military funeral that was taking place in the town. A former commander, Major Maskim Zorin, of a fighting unit known as the Azov Battalion that is presently part of the Ukrainian army, said about 100 people had assembled for the funeral of Ole Fedenko, a soldier with a call sign baby who he said had been killed in fighting near Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. Russia did not immediately comment on the attack. Moscow has denied intentionally aiming civilians, but its missile and drone attacks have continually hit cities across Ukraine since it started its full-scale invasion in February last year. A Russian missile hit a crowded pizza restaurant in the eastern city of Kramatorsk, killing 12 people last month. Victoria Amalina, a prominent writer and war crimes researcher who was severely wounded in the attack, died from her injuries on July 1st. Moving now to elections. After an unforeseen finish to the first round of Guatemala's presidential poll, the country's constitutional court has suspended its certification of the results, citing complaints from rival political parties. Nonetheless, the temporary suspension has raised concerns the court might overturn the outcome of the vote, threatening Guatemala's already delicate democracy. This is unprecedented, said Edgar Ortiz, a constitutional lawyer with the Guatemalan think tank Fundación Libertad y Desarollo, never in history has there been a problem with the vote count, much less one where the Constitutional Court, which has nothing to do with this, has intervened in the system. The court's decision came late on Saturday in the wake of a surprise victory for the progressive seat movement. Bernardo Arevalo, its dark horse candidate, emerged from a crowded field to win one of two seats in the final round of the election with 11.8% of the vote. The only candidate with more votes was Conservative Sandra Torres of the National Unity of Hope UNE party with 15.8% support. But Arevalo's surprise upset triggered complaints from 10 political parties, including the UNE. They argue a great quantity of the votes show inconsistencies, alterations and other discrepancies. But according to Oswaldo Somayo, a constitutional lawyer and professor at St. Carlos University, none of the evidence presented by the party supports their arguments. According to him, there are around 600 of 24,000 polling stations that have to be reviewed to see if there were any disputes. The parties should have evidence of those disputes, but not one political party presented evidence of such irregularities, he added. However, the Constitutional Court replied the complaints with a halt and a review of the vote tallies, which included congressional and municipal races as well as the presidential one. On more stories, Japan may begin Fukushima water release soon. Following a 2-year review, the Japanese government could begin releasing treated but still radioactive water from the ruined Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station in the Pacific Ocean as soon as next month after the United Nations nuclear watchdog gave the controversial plan the approval. According to reports on Wednesday that Japanese officials will explain the plan soon to the local community and neighboring countries amidst fears about the effect of the release of the water, which is presently stored in over 1,000 giant tanks around the site of the power station. Rafael Grossi, the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA Director General, said on Tuesday that the agency's 2-year safety review had concluded the plan was consistent with relevant international safety standards and the controlled, gradual discharges of the treated water to the sea will have a negligible radiological impact on people and the environment. Grossi is anticipated to travel to the Fukushima site on Wednesday with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Over 1.3 million tons of water, enough to fill 500 Olympic-sized swimming pools, has built up at the plant since the March 2011 tsunami destroyed the power station's electricity and cooling systems and triggered the world's worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Most of the water comes from cooling the 3 damaged reactors, and an extensive pumping and filtration system known as the Advanced Liquid Processing System ALPS extracts tons of newly contaminated water every day, filtering out most of the radioactive elements. Still, the plan to release the water, first announced in April 2021, has encountered fierce resistance from Japan's neighbors and Pacific Island nations, as well as fishing and agricultural communities in and around Fukushima, which fear for their livelihoods. In Africa, relief all over Senegal after Sall's declaration. On Tuesday, after President Macky Sall declared he will not seek a contested 3rd term in office, a move that diffused fears of bloodshed, relief swept Senegal and its supporters. Reactions at home and abroad were almost universally positive after Sall, ending months of feverish speculation, said that after long consideration, he had decided against contesting next February's ballot. Sall said he had sought to prioritize Senegal's progress, in particular at a time of socio-economic difficulties and uncertainties, in his nationwide address late Monday. Senegal is more than me and is full of capable leaders for the country's development, he said. Many Senegalese had anticipated Sall to say he will seek a 3rd term, stoking a showdown with opponents who said he was breaching the constitution. Ousmane Sonko, Sall's fiercest critic, on Sunday urged the public to rise en masse against a man he had painted as corrupt and will-be dictator. Clashes between the security forces and Sonko supporters last month left 16 dead, according to the authorities, while Amnesty International put the toll at 24 and the opposition at 30. Let's go on a quick break, and when I come back, I'll bring you more stories. Stay with us. You're welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. More stories from Nigeria says 10th National Assembly principal officers emerged. Yesterday, Godswill Akpabio, President of the Senate, named Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, an All Progressives Congress APC member representing Ekiti Central, as Senate leader for the 10th National Assembly. Akpabio announced the People's Democratic Party PDP Senator for Plateau North Senatorial District, Senator Simon Davo Madkon, as minority leader. Other principal officers of the Senate proclaimed by Akpabio included Senator Dave Imahi, APC Ebonyi South, Deputy Majority Leader, Senator Ali Ndume, APC Borno South, Chief Whip, and Senator Lola Ashiru, APC Kwara South, Deputy Whip. Bamidele clarified that no single political party had the sole right to determine the minority leadership positions in the 10th Senate because apart from the ruling APC, 6 other parties had elected members. But the PDP senator for Kebbi South Senatorial District, Guruba Musa Maidoki, said he was not part of the process that led to the emergence of the Senate minority offices and dismissed it as nebulous. Relatedly, some PDP senators explained why they moved against ex-Vice President Atiku Abubakar and former Governor of Rivers State, Wilson Wike, during the election of the principal officers, saying it is in the overall interests of the party. Also yesterday, National Chairman of APC, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, revealed that the National Working Committee NWC of the party had no hand in the emergence of the principal officers announced by the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. In Abuja, after a NWC meeting that lasted over 3 hours, Chairman of Progressive Governors Forum PGF, Senator Hope Uzodinma, said the leadership of the party enjoy the support of the APC governors. Akpabio announced the principal officers after reading 2 official communications from both the majority and minority caucuses of the Red Chamber. He explained that the announcement of the principal officers was made based on the consensus and unanimous position of the 7 political parties in the 10th Senate. The political parties include APC, PDP, Labour Party, LP, New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, Social Democratic Party, SDP, Young People's Party, YPP, and All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA. The Senate dissolved into a closed session after Akpabio read out the names of the principal officers for the minority caucus. At the resumption of plenary, Akpabio said the majority of members of the Senate Minority Caucus of the Senate, made up of 7 political parties, have come up with their leadership. They are Senator Simon Davo Madkon as the minority leader, Senator Larry Oyewumi, PDP Osun West Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Darlington Nwokocha, LP Abia Central as the Minority Whip, Senator Rufai Hanga, and NNPP Kano Central as the Deputy Minority Whip. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas, announced Julius Ohombere, representing the O1 Federal Constituency of Edo State, as the majority leader, while Kingsley Chinda, who represents Ohio/Okpo Federal Constituency of Rivers State, was picked as the minority leader. Other principal officers from the majority caucus, as announced yesterday, included Abdullahi Ibrahim Halims, Kogi APC, the deputy majority leader, Usman Bello Kumo, Gombe APC chief whip, and Adewumi Anonuga Ogun APC deputy majority whip. Similarly, Kingsley Chinda was picked as minority leader, Ali Isa JC Gombe PDP minority whip, Ali Madaki Kano NNPP deputy minority leader, and George Ozo Dinobi Anambra LP deputy minority whip. Moving forward, INEC to indict Adamawa REC, 215 other offenders. Yesterday, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, accused some resident electoral commissioners, REC, who took part in this year's general election of failing to properly manage the task lawfully assigned to them. Following the completion of police investigation on the activities of the suspended resident electoral commission for Adamawa State, Yunusa Hudu Ari, the commission said it would take legal actions against him in the coming days, as well as 215 other electoral offenders. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, while addressing RECs from the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory FCT Abuja, said the police had concluded their investigations into the Hudu Ari case and submitted a case to the commission. He said aside the governorship elections in Kogi, Bayelsa and Imo states, the commission will conduct 4 by-elections before the end of the year. The meeting with the RECs marked the commencement of a month-long review of the conduct of this year's general election conducted by the commission. Yakubu said, and I quote, "Let me at this point specifically reiterate to the resident electoral commissioners that we are commencing this debriefings with you because you are central to the conduct of elections." Commenting on alleged infractions committed during the election, he said, "We are presently looking at all the evidence of infractions during the election, including the prosecution of offenders. We are looking at the activities of all actors involved in the election, including some of our high-ranking officials." And finally, on the news, Tinubu tenders Chicago Varsity academic records. On Tuesday, the Presidential Election Petition Court in Abuja acknowledged as exhibits the Chicago State University academic records of President Bola Tinubu, as well as a number of other documents. Tinubu tendered the documents before the tribunal through his legal team led by Wole Olanipekun-San. The president, in compliance with the tribunal's Monday directive on Tuesday, opened his defense in response to the petitions by the People's Democratic Party and its candidate, Atiku Abubakar, challenging his Tinubu's victory in the February 25th presidential election. At the Tuesday proceedings, Olanipekun also tendered Tinubu's U.S. visa. Tinubu's Chicago State University academic documents tendered by Olanipekun included a letter of admission offered to him by the institution. Also tendered were documents of Nigeria Immigration Service, which he said declared Tinubu for U.S. trips, indicating that he visited the U.S. unhindered between 2011 and 2021. Also admitted as exhibit by the court was a U.S. Embassy letter of April 4, 2003 to the Nigeria police, stating that the U.S. Embassy had no criminal records of Tinubu in the United States. Apart from the educational documents, Tinubu also tendered newspaper publications on a number of lawsuits filed against him by different groups. The court also admitted an originating summons of a suit instituted at the Supreme Court by the Attorneys General of Adamawa, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta, Edo and Sokoto states, challenging Tinubu's candidacy to stand for the 2023 presidential election. The court proceeded over by Haruna Samani, adjourned for the proceedings till Wednesday, that's today. Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission also on Tuesday opened and closed its defense in the petition filed by the Labour Party and its candidate Peter Obi on the credibility of the February 25th presidential poll. On Tuesday morning, at the recommenced proceedings, counsel for INEC, AB Mahmoud San, proceeded to close its defense in the petition after calling the first witness, Lawrence Bayode, an assistant director in charge of ICT department. On Monday, Bayode had testified in aid of the commission's defense against the petition filed by the PDP and Atiku. The tribunal adjourned till Wednesday today for Tinubu and his vice Kasim Shettima to open their defense in Obi's petition. A recap of major stories says Israel evacuates Jenin as Gaza fire rockets. Ukraine says last few days counter-offensive rather fruitful. South Korea says North Korea's satellite has no military utility. At least 43 injured in Russian attack on Ukraine. And Guatemala court suspends certification of poor result. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Dureki.